I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at the screen like it was a slow-motion car crash I couldn't look away from. The words were right there, plain as day. No code names, no hidden accounts. Just Elena, my wife, and Julian, my brother. I can't pretend anymore. I love you, Julian. That line hit harder than anything else in the entire thread. Not the flirtatious jokes, not the I miss you-s, not even the pictures, those were bad, sure, but this line? It rewrote everything. My whole damn life. My name is Sam Walker. I'm 39 years old. I live in Tempe, Arizona. I design buildings for a living, schools, libraries, offices. My brother Julian? He's the one who paints murals on them and calls it art. Or at least, that's how we used to joke. I sat on our living room couch, laptop warm on my thighs, as the evening sun cut through the blinds and threw patterns on the hardwood floor. A normal Thursday. Until it wasn't. Elena had forgotten to log out of her account. That's how it started. One tab open, a private message thread tucked neatly between emails about the office gala and some online shoe order. I almost clicked away. But then I saw Julian's name. Curiosity turned to nausea in seconds. I read every message. Scrolled back months. My eyes didn't blink enough. My breath didn't come regular. They had a whole world I didn't know about. Private jokes, travel plans, a Spotify playlist called Us, Goddamn Poetry. She said she loved his vision. Said I'd never understand what it felt like to be seen. No anger. Not yet. Just a stillness. Like my heart had stopped to listen. I didn't say a word when Elena walked through the door 2 hours later, coat draped over her arm like she hadn't just lit my life on fire. Hey babe, she said, cheerful. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a. She kissed my cheek before I could react. I didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Just let her breeze past me like I wasn't sitting in the ruins of our marriage. She asked if I wanted anything for dinner. I said no. She made herself a salad and scrolled through her phone on the bar stool while humming along to some indie folk song that Julian probably introduced her to. Every now and then she'd glance over like she expected me to say something. But I didn't. I just sat there, nodding along. Playing normal. I needed time. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just to understand what the hell had happened and who the hell I had been married to this whole time. Later that night I lay beside her in bed. She drifted off quickly, her breaths going slow and steady. I watched the ceiling fan spin, the blade shadows slicing across the room like clock hands. 3 feet away from me, the woman I built a life with was sleeping like nothing had changed. She had no idea what I knew. And neither did Julian. The next morning, I sat in my truck outside the firm's parking garage for a full 20 minutes, engine idling, coffee untouched. My inbox was full, my voicemail blinking, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside just yet. Not after what I had read the night before. Not with Julian and Elena's words still ringing in my ears like church bells from a funeral I didn't know I was attending. I didn't want sympathy. I wasn't even sure I wanted to talk. But I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd find some kind of grounding in my family. A rope to hold onto in the middle of all this wreckage. So I called my mom. Teresa Walker had always been the soft place to land. I wasn't expecting a parade, but I figured she'd at least listen. Offer some shocked gasp. A horrified, oh honey. Something. Instead, she texted back. Not even a phone call. Maybe skip the office gala this year. It's best for everyone. Best for everyone. I reread that line 5 times. It didn't get better. Didn't get softer. She knew. She had to. I called her anyway. Straight to voicemail. Then I tried Dad. Arthur. We hadn't been close in years, but I figured this wasn't something he'd ignore. Not if he knew what was happening. Not if he had any clue how much this hurt. He picked up after 2 rings. Sam, he said, like I was a contractor calling about plumbing. What's going on? I took a breath. You talked to Mom? Briefly. So you know. A pause. Not a long one. Just enough to let me know the answer was yes. Look, he said, and I could hear the gears already grinding in that calm, disappointed tone he'd perfected over the years. Elena's not a bad person. Neither is Julian. I blinked. Are you serious right now? You were never what she needed, Sam. The words landed like a shove to the chest. You held her back, he added. You've always been so safe. Predictable. But Elena's, she's dynamic. She needs someone who sees things bigger. He was talking about my brother. My own father, standing on Julian's side like I was some tragic speed bump in their love story. I built our house, I said quietly. I built half of his office. You built walls, he replied. Julian built dreams. I hung up. I didn't shout. I didn't throw my phone. I just sat there in the truck, hands trembling slightly, and stared through the windshield like something outside could anchor me. But the world looked the same. Too normal for what had just broken open. An hour later, as I was sitting in the break room pretending to check blueprints, my phone buzzed again. Julian. I didn't want to look. I shouldn't have. But I did. She chose the man with vision, not just blueprints. That was it? No, sorry. No hesitation. Just a pat on his own back, like he'd won some competition he wasn't even supposed to enter. I locked my phone. He didn't just betray me. He erased me. Took everything I'd built and slipped into it like it was always meant for him. Later that day, I sat alone in the drafting bay while everyone else buzzed around with talk of the gala. People kept asking if Elena was coming. If Julian was going to speak. If I'd be there to present the design award. I mumbled something about deadlines and slipped out early. That night, I didn't go home. Not to Elena. I drove to a quiet park across town and sat under a busted street lamp watching moths slam themselves into the glass over and over like they couldn't figure out why the light wasn't helping. That's how it felt, being the guy who played it safe, who worked hard, stayed loyal, paid bills on time, and kept his promises. But in the end, none of it mattered. I wasn't visionary. I wasn't dynamic. I was just the scaffolding they used to build something shinier. My family didn't choose me. They chose the spectacle. And suddenly, I wasn't part of the picture anymore. 3 days later, I moved out. No big showdown. No screaming match. No dramatic confrontation with Elena. I just waited until she left for her yoga class and packed a single suitcase, a box of tools, and 2 changes of clothes. Everything else, the books, the pictures, the mugs with our initials on them, could rot with the memories. I didn't even leave a note. What was the point? The apartment I'd called home for 7 years looked smaller with my absence already carved into it. My side of the closet bare. The nightstand empty. A place for a husband who didn't live there anymore. I drove across town to the only place I could think of. Zeke's apartment sat on the 2nd floor of a weathered brick building above a bookstore that still smelled like glue and dust. The hallway always smelled like fresh paint and Vietnamese takeout. I rang the bell and waited, unsure what I'd even say. Zeke opened the door and blinked at the sight of me. He didn't ask. Didn't say what happened or what the hell. He just stepped aside and said, "Room's yours." That's the kind of friend Zeke was. A guy who didn't need context to understand heartbreak when it showed up at his door with a duffel bag. The guest room, more of a converted den, had a narrow twin bed, a desk pushed against the wall, and a shelf lined with old sci-fi paperbacks. It felt like a dorm. Or a reset button. I sat down and stared at the wall for a long time. My phone buzzed every now and then. Never from Elena. Never from Julian. Just emails. Work. White noise. Zeke knocked softly a little after 9. "You hungry?" I wasn't. But I nodded. He heated up leftover stir-fry and poured us both a glass of bourbon. We ate in silence, legs stretched out in front of us on the worn corduroy couch. "She know you left?" he finally asked. "She will." He nodded like that was enough. "You want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He clinked his glass to mine and said, "Cool. Just let me know if you need more bourbon or less people." That was the first time I exhaled in 3 days. The next morning, I woke up in the stiff little bed, the blinds slatted just enough to let in a sliver of warm light. No perfume on the pillow beside me. No Elena. I checked my phone. Nothing from her. But my firm's Instagram page had a new post, a group shot at the gala. Right there in the center, Julian grinning like a conquering hero. Elena on his arm, dazzling in the dress I paid for. Behind them, the building I designed, the project I bled for. Caption, "A visionary night with the dream team. Design meets innovation." And under that, a tag at Julian Walker Designs. No mention of me. No credit. No history. Just the people who stole my life posing in front of my work like I was never there. I zoomed in, scanned every pixel. My building. My blueprints. My lines. But his name. The likes rolled in. Coworkers I used to drink with on Fridays leaving flame emojis and applause. My old professor calling it an exciting collaboration. No one asked where I was. No one wondered why the architect was missing from the spotlight. I threw the phone down and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't just betrayed. I was erased. And somewhere out there, Elena was sipping champagne and laughing at a joke Julian told, probably one I used to tell, while my signature was quietly scrubbed from the story. I hadn't just lost a wife or a brother. I'd lost my place. And now all I had was this quiet little room with a stack of sci-fi books and Zeke's silence, which, to be honest, felt more like home than anything else I'd known in months. So I stayed. Not because I had a plan. But because exile, at least here, came with warm lighting and no lies. It was a Tuesday morning when everything clicked into place. Zeke had already left for work and I was nursing the last of a lukewarm coffee while flipping through an old box I'd grabbed from the storage unit. I brought it over mostly by accident, thought it was filled with old sketch pads and scrapwood samples. Instead, I found paperwork, receipts, contracts, loose ends I hadn't looked at in years. Half asleep and halfway through a stale bagel, I opened a manila envelope marked 2019, Julian office lease. I hadn't seen it in a while, but the signature jumped out at me immediately. Mine. Cosigner. I blinked. A second page showed the loan approval for the office Julian now occupied. The same office I had walked him through, negotiated rent on, and partially financed when he said his freelance work needed a proper home. My jaw tightened. I flipped through more papers. A receipt from a furniture supplier billed to Walker and Walker Design with a handwritten note from Elena that read, "We'll pay you back once things settle." There was the down payment slip for our apartment, signed jointly, my name first. Then the contractor invoices for the kitchen remodel, all paid from my account. I spread the documents across the bed like evidence from a crime scene. Together, they painted a story I hadn't realized I was starring in, not just the abandoned husband, but the bank. The foundation they built their shiny little world on. I stood over the pile for a long time until I didn't feel numb anymore. I felt ready. That afternoon, I sat at Zeke's dining table and opened my laptop. I spent hours drafting an itemized invoice, not some emotional rant or a middle finger disguised as a demand. Just clean, organized facts. Shared renovations $14,360. Down payment contribution $31,000. Unpaid office expenses $8,750. Furniture/interior purchases $6,200. Total due $60,310. Attached to it, I included a formal notice of withdrawal from the lease agreement on Julian's office space. A legal termination of co-ownership. I had checked the fine print twice. If either party withdrew, the remaining signatory was solely liable for the outstanding balance, including the balloon payment due in 6 months. Julian was about to have a very expensive reckoning. The language I used was cold, clinical. Every sentence read like it had been vetted by 3 lawyers. No exclamation marks. No, I hope this finds you well. Just, this notice serves as documentation of my formal intent to sever financial liability and reclaim debt owed. At the bottom, I added the due date. Then I hit send. First to Julian. Then to Elena. I CC'd Arthur and Teresa just to make sure the whole damn family was watching. The responses came fast. Elena was first. What the hell is this supposed to mean? Then Julian. Are you seriously threatening me over money? Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. Arthur's reply was just one line. You're making a mistake, Sam. Teresa followed with. This is petty and cruel. You're acting like a stranger. I didn't answer a single one. I muted the thread, turned my phone face down, and poured myself a glass of bourbon from Zeke's cabinet. Outside, the sky was turning that pale desert gray before a storm. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was falling. I felt grounded. I hadn't begged. I hadn't cried. I had taken back control. Let them scream. Let them call me bitter, petty, cold. It didn't matter. They wanted to treat me like I was invisible? Fine. Let them feel what it's like when a ghost comes back and asks for every single cent. The first message from Elena came in less than 24 hours after I sent the invoice. It was a heart emoji. That was it. No words, no explanation. Just a red heart. Like I'd sent her flowers instead of a formal debt collection notice. 5 minutes later came the second message. An eye-roll gif. It looped over and over on my screen, some cartoon character making a dramatic face like I just overreacted in a group chat. That's how she responded to $60,000. I didn't reply. I forwarded both messages to the same email thread, attached a PDF labeled Final Notice, Payment Terms, and set a 30-day deadline. No threats. No emotional plea. Just clear language, account numbers, and a calendar date. Then I put my phone down and walked into Zeke's kitchen where he was pouring cheap champagne into 2 mismatched coffee mugs. What's this? I asked. He lifted one and grinned. To flipping the script. I smirked. You don't even know what I sent. Don't need to. You've had that face all day. He handed me a mug. That's the face of a man who finally stopped bleeding for people who never bandaged his wounds. We clinked mugs. The champagne tasted like dish soap, but I didn't care. It was the first time in weeks that something tasted like victory. By Friday, Elena transferred the full amount. No email. No apology. No explanation. Just a silent lump sum in my account labeled personal reimbursement. I stared at the confirmation for a long time. Part of me expected to feel triumphant. Another part of me felt nothing at all. No joy, no justice. Just a quiet confirmation that when the guilt stopped working, the money showed up. Julian, on the other hand, started to unravel. 3 days after the transfer, I got a text from him at 2:47 a.m. You're going to tank everything. We have deals lined up. Investors. Clients. You're being spiteful. I ignored it. An hour later. They won't let me refinance. Not without you. You're forcing the sale. Still ignored. He called 4 times that morning. I let every call ring out. Around noon, I received a long, rambling email, no subject line, no punctuation, just a string of desperate bargaining attempts. He said I was blowing things out of proportion. That the gala had boosted his exposure. That we could still make something work. That family didn't turn on family. At the bottom, one line stood out. I've done more with that building in 6 months than you did in 6 years. I copied the entire email, pasted it into a folder labeled evidence, and moved on with my day. I could feel it starting, the cracks forming in their golden facade. Elena's smooth PR sheen slipping just slightly. Julian's confident designer persona giving way to panic. The emails, the late-night texts, the frantic calls, they weren't about guilt. They were about fear. They thought I'd disappear quietly. They thought I'd cry, maybe drink too much, maybe move away. They didn't think I'd open spreadsheets, find receipts, and speak their language better than they could. Zeke knocked on my door that night and peeked his head in. You good? I was sitting at the desk with my laptop open, drafting a formal request to terminate Julian's business name from our firm registry. The cursor blinked at the end of the sentence, effective immediately. Walker & Walker Design will revert to a sole proprietorship under Sam Walker. I looked up and nodded. Yeah, I'm good. Good, he said and leaned against the doorframe. Because from where I'm standing, they're about 3 steps away from begging. They won't, I said. They'll never admit they need me. He shrugged. Maybe not out loud. But trust me, when people lose their safety net, it's not pride that hits first. It's panic. And he was right. By the end of the week, I got another email from Julian. Short this time. Let's talk. I'm willing to be reasonable. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't looking for conversation. I was building a case and they'd handed me all the bricks. It was a Tuesday evening when Julian showed up. Zeke and I were halfway through a bad action movie and some even worse pizza when the buzzer rang. We both looked up at the same time. Zeke raised an eyebrow. You expecting anyone? Nope. We let it buzz again. Then a third time. Then the banging started. I already knew. Zeke opened the door to the building downstairs and left it unlocked, not out of hospitality, but because he wanted a witness present when things went sideways. Julian stomped up the stairs like he owned the place, and the second I heard his voice in the hallway, I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. He didn't knock. Just shoved the door open and stormed in, eyes wild, face flushed. There you are, he snapped, like I'd gone into hiding instead of deliberately cutting him off. I stayed on the couch, calm. My feet didn't move. My hands didn't twitch. You know you're not invited, right? Zeke stood beside the bookshelf, arms crossed. Julian ignored him. You need to fix this. I stared at him. Fix what? He threw his arms out. The firm. The building. Everything. You're blowing it up because what, you're hurt? Grow up. Zeke took a step forward, but I raised a hand. It's fine. Julian kept going. You think this makes you look strong? It makes you look pathetic. All these little legal games, invoices, and withdrawal notices? What happened to being a man? I stood up slowly, not threatening, not rattled. You mean a man like the one who sleeps with his brother's wife behind his back? His face twitched. You never made her happy. You know that. You were just comfortable. She needed more. She needed you? I asked, voice even. The guy who crashes on couches and lives off other people's money? That's the upgrade. His nostrils flared. You were jealous. Always have been. Mom and Dad saw it. Elena saw it. You hate that I'm the one people notice. No, I said quietly. I hate that you mistake attention for worth. He took a step toward me, not swinging, just posturing. Getting close. Trying to intimidate like we were 16 again and he was still the kid who got away with everything. Zeke stepped between us. That's close enough. Julian sneered. What, you need your friend to fight your battles now? No, I said, looking directly at him. I just don't want to be charged with assault when you finally say the wrong thing. He laughed bitterly. You think you've won? That getting your money and screwing me over makes you some kind of hero. I tilted my head. You think she chose you? You were just next. That's the part you still don't get. Julian's eyes narrowed. She didn't leave me for a better man, I said. She settled for the one who made it easier to forget me. That landed. He didn't respond. Just stood there, chest heaving, caught somewhere between rage and realization. I walked to the counter, picked up my phone, and pulled up my messages. Then I sent one line. To Teresa Walker, if Julian shows up again, I'll file a restraining order. Consider this a courtesy warning. I showed it to him. You're threatening Mom now? I'm protecting myself, I said. Something neither of you ever learned how to do without dragging someone else down. Zeke opened the door again. You can go now. Julian lingered a second longer, still trying to summon whatever charm he used to get by. But the mask didn't fit anymore. He looked worn. Empty. Smaller than I'd ever seen him. You're not family anymore, I said quietly. He walked out without another word. The door clicked shut. Zeke turned to me. That felt permanent. It was. I sat back down, picked up my cold pizza, and rewound the movie like nothing had happened. Because it was done. No more guilt. No more brother. Just me, the silence, and the peace of finally being done with all of it. It started as whispers. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just murmurs in the corners of meeting rooms, side glances in the hallway, quiet conversations that trailed off when someone entered. The kind of shifts you only notice when you've been invisible for a while and suddenly people start looking at you again. I wasn't back at the office, not officially. But I still got emails. I still had access to internal reports and HR logs. The firm never formally severed ties, they were too polite for that, too corporate. But after the gala, it was clear they had moved on. Or at least, thought they had. Then the tips started coming in. Anonymous at first. A flagged message in the firm's ethics inbox. Subject, improper attribution, gala presentation. It was simple, a note claiming Julian had presented designs that weren't his. That the project everyone had applauded that night was actually mine. Attached to it was a photo of a printed blueprint. My signature, faint but visible, at the bottom right corner. Then a second tip came in. Then a third. One of the HR managers, someone I'd worked with on earlier projects, forwarded me an internal memo by mistake. At the bottom, a line stood out. Legal exposure risk if attribution issue escalates. Recommend quiet investigation. Julian was about to learn that charisma only carried you so far, especially when the receipts start stacking up. Around the same time, Elena began to lose her shine. Her PR firm was known for managing lifestyle brands and startup launches, smooth Instagram rollouts, flashy pitch decks, the kind of campaigns that made bad products look irresistible. But image depends on story, and cracks in a story make clients nervous. One by one, clients began to drift. A boutique hotel chain backed out of a partnership. A nutrition app paused its collaboration. One brand, ironically a marriage counseling service, pulled its entire contract after someone emailed them anonymously with screenshots of Elena's texts. Zeke found the whole thing darkly amusing. Let me guess, he said one night as we sat on the fire escape with beers in hand. They didn't think consequences applied to people with good lighting and better teeth. I shrugged. They built the whole show on lies. I'm just turning the lights on. By the end of the month, things began shifting inside the firm. I got a message from a junior architect I had mentored years ago. Hey, just wanted to say I know what really happened with the city center design. We all do now. Julian's been different lately. Nervous. Then another. You okay? Some of us miss you around here. You deserve better. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough. Enough to remind me that silence hadn't been weakness. It had been strategy. People were choosing sides now, and some of them were choosing mine. Meanwhile, Julian tried to keep the illusion going. Still posted sleek photos from the office. Still used buzzwords like collaborative synergy and creative breakthroughs. But the comments were drying up. Engagement was down. I knew the final blow would come soon. Zeke helped me file to sell my portion of the office property, the same space Julian thought he controlled. It had taken weeks to prepare. Legal documents, valuation reports, more back and forth than I thought I had patience for. But I stayed calm, methodical, ruthless in the way only a person who has nothing left to lose can be. We listed it with a quiet but eager commercial realtor. Within 3 weeks, a tech startup reached out. They loved the space. Loved the location. Loved the clean lines and mid-century industrial bones. They made an offer. Full asking price. I signed the paperwork with a pen that used to sit on Julian's desk. When I left the office that day, I looked up at the building one more time. My building. My lines. My design. Soon it would belong to someone else. Not Julian. Not Elena. Not the family that tossed me aside like old furniture. Just me letting go. And for the first time, that didn't feel like loss. It felt like power. The email came from the firm's board just before noon on a Thursday. Subject line, organizational changes effective immediately. I didn't have to open it to know. But I did anyway. Julian Walker has resigned his position as creative director effective immediately. We thank him for his contributions and wish him the best in his future endeavors. No fanfare. No farewell post. Just a neat, corporate exit like they were erasing a typo, not cutting ties with the man who, weeks earlier, had smiled from their gala stage like a prince in his prime. I read it once. Then I deleted it. That was the day Julian lost the firm. He didn't make a statement. Elena didn't post a supportive tweet. My parents didn't text to ask if I knew. But I knew. Julian hadn't left on his own. He'd been pushed. Quietly, politely, the way cowards are removed when they've embarrassed people with money. And without the firm, without the building, and without me, Julian was finally standing alone. Elena's attempt to recover came 2 days later. A voicemail. Her voice was soft, rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in front of the mirror. I don't know who you really are anymore, and maybe that's on me. Maybe I didn't see you clearly before. I just wanted to say that. I listened to it once. Then I deleted it without replying. Let her sit in that silence. The next day came the real surprise, an email from my parents. Teresa and Arthur. I hadn't heard a word from them since Julian showed up at Zeke's place. I figured they'd gone silent to avoid taking sides. Or maybe to preserve the illusion that they hadn't done anything wrong. The subject line, "We miss you." Arthur's message was formal, clipped. He wrote like he was still on a rotary phone. Teresa's was longer. Rambling. Emotional. "We never meant to hurt you. We just didn't know how to handle everything. Families make mistakes. But we love you. We always have." I stared at the screen for a while. Then I closed the email and marked it unread. I wasn't interested in reopening old wounds just because the people holding the knives decided they felt bad. Instead, I signed a new lease. A small loft in downtown Tempe tucked above a hardware store and 2 blocks from a light rail stop. Exposed brick, clean lines, quiet neighbors. No shared walls. No shared names on the mailbox. Just mine. Sam Walker. Moving in was simple. I didn't bring much. Just my books. My tools. My grandfather's drafting table I'd kept in storage. The first framed sketch I ever sold. A coffee maker that worked half the time and a small record player Zeke gave me as a housewarming gift. No Instagram tour. No New Beginnings post. Just silence. Deliberate, chosen, mine. Zeke came over that first Friday night with burritos and a 6-pack. He walked through the door, looked around, and whistled. "Damn. You really did it." I nodded. "Feels clean." He held up a can. "To solitude." I raised mine. "To being done apologizing." We clinked, and that was it. No speeches. No toasts. That night, I lay in bed in the dark, the hum of the city below me, no text messages to dread, no footsteps in the hallway I didn't recognize. No pretending. No ghosts. Teresa sent one more message a week later. Just one line. "Your father's retirement dinner is next week. Please come." I deleted it unread. Because the silence they had filled with betrayal was now mine. And I wasn't giving it back. Julian moved back in with my parents. Not long after his resignation, he disappeared from the design pages. His Instagram, once flooded with renderings and behind-the-scenes videos, went dark. Eventually someone tagged him in a blurry family photo at a backyard barbecue, Arthur in a polo shirt, Teresa in pearls, and Julian in a folding chair with a solo cup looking like a man who'd wandered into his own pity party and couldn't find the exit. I didn't comment. I didn't share it. I just stared at it for a while, then kept scrolling. Elena faded too. She stopped showing up at events, stopped posting selfies at brand launches and rooftop lounges. Word got around that she was taking a step back from her firm. One day, I saw her through the window of a cafe in Scottsdale, sitting alone at a corner table with 2 bags under her eyes and a laptop that looked like it hadn't been charged in days. She looked up and caught my eye. Neither of us moved. Neither of us smiled. I kept walking. Some relatives, the quiet ones, the ones who'd stayed neutral while everything burned, started texting again. A cousin from Flagstaff sent a long message about how shocked she was by everything. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years wrote, "We always knew you were the one with real integrity. I'm sorry we didn't say it sooner." I didn't answer either of them. People only remember your worth when it becomes inconvenient to ignore. At the loft, I kept things simple. No framed family pictures. No reminders. Just the space I had chosen, furnished exactly the way I wanted. Dark wood, clean lines, quiet light. I built new bookshelves with my own hands, one for design theory, one for poetry. Installed a desk by the window where I could sketch again without the weight of someone else watching over my shoulder. Rewired a lamp just because I could. I hadn't done that in years, fixed something for the joy of it. Then one afternoon, a packet arrived in the mail. Thick. Heavy. The final paperwork. Sale complete. Funds transferred. Accounts closed. A letter from the title company confirmed the office space was no longer tied to Julian or to me. The startup had taken full possession. I stared at the signature page for a while. Then I signed it, date and all, and set the pen down. That was it. The last piece. Debt paid. Property sold. Ties cut. There was no audience. No one to clap. No grand you did it moment. Just a man in a quiet loft, sitting at a desk he'd built himself, signing away the last thing that tethered him to people who'd once called him family. And it felt like breathing for the first time in years. There was no joy in their downfall. No pleasure in watching them shrink. Just space. Like watching clouds pass after a storm. The kind of peace that doesn't come with applause, just stillness. And in that stillness I found myself. The rooftop bar wasn't fancy. No velvet ropes. No line of influencers waiting to tag the sunset in their stories. Just string lights, worn wood tables, and a view of the city that stretched into the desert like it finally had room to breathe. Zeke and I clinked glasses as the sun dropped behind the skyline. To what? He asked. I looked out at the horizon. To no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. He raised an eyebrow. That's either really poetic or really depressing. Both, I said, smirking. It had been 3 months since I signed the final documents, handed off the building, and closed the chapter. The firm never reached out. Not a thank you, not an apology, not even a call to ask why I'd disappeared from the website. I figured they were too embarrassed to admit they'd replaced a foundation with cardboard and hoped no one would notice when it collapsed. Didn't matter. Arthur and Teresa had gone radio silent after their last email. The one with the subject line, "Let's not let pride keep us apart." I didn't reply. The family group chat had quietly rebooted without me. Zeke showed me once he was still technically in it by accident. There were photos of my cousin's new baby, a blurry picture of Arthur grilling, and a meme Julian had forwarded that made no one laugh. My name never came up. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't hurt. I didn't care. That morning I woke up in the loft, no messages, no calendar invites, no headaches. Just the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of quiet. I stretched, made toast, read a chapter of a book about Japanese joinery, and sketched a redesign for a library in Tucson I'd started freelancing on. It felt like being weightless. People kept asking if I was lonely. As if being alone and being free were the same thing. They weren't. Lonely was waking up next to someone who already chose your replacement. Free was knowing no one was watching your life just to harvest it for themselves. The last message I got from my mother came the day before. Your father's retirement dinner is next week. 6 p.m. Please come. I didn't even open it at first. Just saw the preview on my lock screen while waiting for coffee to brew. When I finally tapped it open, I read the line once. Then deleted it. No anger. No shaking hands. Just delete. Zeke glanced over his glass at me on the rooftop. You look better. Cleaner, I said. Like, morally? Or like, you finally stopped dressing like you live in your workshop. I laughed. A real one this time. He raised his glass again. To whatever this version of you is. I think I like him. I sipped. The city below us buzzed and blinked, but up here, it was quiet. Peaceful. I didn't need the last word. Didn't need revenge. Didn't need to rebuild the narrative they tried to control. I had walked away. And that was the loudest thing I could have ever done. Because silence, real, chosen silence, was its own kind of victory. No ghosts. No games. No explanations. Just me. Whole.